A little bit of inside baseball for Episcopalians who pray the daily office. Over the course of this week, the liturgy is marked by a series of what are called the great antiphons, each of which begins with an O. And the one for today is perfectly attuned to the heartbeat of the Feast of St. Thomas. And it goes like this. O dayspring, brightness of the light eternal and sun of righteousness, come and enlighten those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death. Now, and so that for me, the Feast of St. Thomas is both to an invitation to thanksgiving and a real call to intercession. To thanksgiving because to read the story is to see that God loved Thomas, in the midst of all of his cynical pragmatism, took the initiative, showed up, really all but unasked for, went straight to Thomas, showed him his hands and his side, and said, with probably not a little lack of chiding, stop not believing, literally in the Greek, believe. And to the astonishment of probably everyone around him, he confessed and said, what? That you're a deity. Not just you're a good guy, or that even you're the Israeli concept of Messiah, my Lord and my God, which is what's picked up in the collect. That's how profound. In other words, what we don't see, but is so clearly evident, meaning don't see with the naked eye, is that God in Jesus did precisely what was necessary to bring Thomas to the place of not just faith, but saving faith. He literally prefigures in that declaration the Council of Chalcedon, which would take place, a couple hundred years later. And it so changed him that if tradition serves us rightly, he was the one that literally went to Syria, almost followed what would later be called the Silk Road, and evangelized India, and so that the Mar Thoma Church, which is ancient, still claims Thomas as their apostle, as their founding evangelistic member. So it's thanksgiving, not only for what God did for Thomas, but out of that, the promise of what he does. Because he thinks no more of Thomas than he does any of us. One of the scandals of the Christian gospel is that God loves each individual exactly the same, without shadow of turning. And because that's the case, we both say, thank you that you have opened the doors for us to come and say, I believe. Because it's actually an impossible situation. Faith has to be a gift from God, because we cannot get there by virtue of either logic or even tradition. In other words, something has to happen inside of us for the things that we see declared, even if we grew up in church, actually to become something that becomes a living reality in us, that changes us and causes us to express, I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. You just can't get there by absorption. There has to be something that God does inside this broken, sinful heart of ours that by its very nature rebels against that which is being declared, for us to make that kind of declaration and in essence own it and say, not only do I believe because of that, but I believe. And it's a declaration of transformation that God has done something in my heart. It's also an invitation and a call to intercession, especially when I think of the hundreds of people that will show up, the lost but yet hungry, who will come to our churches on the 24th and 25th of December. Because again, if God loves everyone, regardless of who they are, then the same invitation is in fact open to them. And that there is a longing that has been placed in the heart of humanity by God himself for the very thing that is offered to us in Jesus. The very thing that is offered to us in Jesus. And that in fact, the promise of God moving in the hearts of his people, those who he is calling to be with himself, is actually it's both a call to intercession and a rejoicing. Did you apply the verses that you just heard in the psalm to the possibility of people coming to faith over the course of the Christmas season? Those who sowed with tears will reap with songs of joy. Those who go out weeping, carrying the seed, will come again with joy, shouldering their sheaves. If there's anything that I want to live into as I prepare for Christmas and for the role that I play and others will for the sake of our Christmas services, it's that those who come to those services weeping will go out rejoicing, even if you never see them shed a tear. Lastly, no matter what it is that causes those or even us to be in a place of doubt, wavering faith, unsureness, or even just sheer cynicism, the story of what we see in Thomas is God's absolute commitment to overcoming that, no matter what it is. There's a poem I wish to end with that really expresses that. This is from G. Studdert Kennedy. Kennedy was, besides being a brilliant poet, wrote his poems out of his role as World War I chaplain. He was a British Church of England chaplain. Some of his lyrics are actually in our hymnal. He was known affectionately as Woodbine Willie. He was one of the guys. And yet he wrote with an extraordinary level of both pathos and genuine eloquence, and never ever separated his preaching from his own struggles in faith in the midst of the horror of World War I. So I want to read this because it expresses perfectly for me the willingness of God to come even in the midst of the darkest of situations, which always gives hope, it seems to me, for us, and the confidence that we need to be able to offer that invitation to others. The title is called Come Unto Me. Come unto me. It sounds like mockery. A voice that calls a wounded man across a weary space that he cannot travel. For we would come to thee. We long to see thy face, but we are wounded sore, and evermore our weakness binds and blinds us. We stretch out our hands vainly toward that shore, where thou art waiting for thy own. We groan and try and fail again. We cannot come. We are but men. Come thou to us, O Lord. Come thou and find us, shepherd of the sheep. We cannot come to thee. It is so dark. But hark, I hear a voice that sounds across that sea. It says, I come. That's our Lord's commitment to us. And that is the confidence that we have, that regardless of whatever it is that blocks us, or even the doubt and longing that seems to separate us from God, just like Thomas, he will come and has come in the nativity of our Lord.